All right, for this video, what we're going to go through is some of the more complex things that in Unreal with materials and post-processing and getting ready for setting up your scene. We've had every single piece needing to be unwrapped and textured, but we can focus on the key compositional elements. That's going to include a well-aligned material for the checkerboard patterns and animated materials for the screen here. Cover how we can get things rotating like this, fairly simple if we wanted it to be an animated or maybe an animated scene. Let's jump straight in. The first thing that I want to talk about is how can we get this screen effect on our monitors. It is a bit of a complex material, but if you stick with me, I will go through all of the pieces that you need to understand. And I've got two methods, a more simple and a more complex one. Let's open up the material that I've made here, please. These things here, these are output nodes. That's because I've got a bit more of a complex graph over here, and we can have a look at how each portion of the material is being made based off the output node, the input going in here. We can see once everything's added together, we've got these warped lines with the scan line going down and the rotating ring. We've set the specular to 1 and roughness to 0 to get a nice, smooth, shiny screen. We've got over here a blur, and don't worry about this is switching between the simple or the more advanced one. And you can see the simple one works very similarly. If I switch between them to the more advanced one, which looks a little cleaner, and then the scan line, you probably won't be able to tell. That's the blue line coming down here. If I start previewing that node, it's the difference between the advanced and the more simple one. And by advanced, I mean version that is driven using a texture, or a version which is using maths to create a pattern. Let's start with probably the simplest bit, and I'm going to show us. I start previewing this bit, getting the ring spinning around here. We have this node here called flipbook. For this, you need to type flipbook, and we need a texture object, and where we'll worry about this bump offset in a moment as well. But what that's doing is actually making it, if we look like it's a little bit further back in the image, if we don't have that on, it flat on there. You can see when I rotate, it's on the surface of the screen. But if I put this in, it sends it back, and there's a little bit of perspective as if it's further behind the image. To get that CRT of look. That's what the bump offset with a value of -2.9 that I've done for this. The texture object here that we've got is the ring, and you can see it's got the 4 animation slides within it, and I've set the number of rows to be 1. There's 1 row, and there are 4 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4. If we go over to this asset, we can see this is what we've got. What I've done is taken the sprite sheet for the ring and split up with padding around the edges and spaced it out like this. It doesn't really matter what this image is, as long as you know you've got an imaginary grid of 1, 2, 3, 4 textures that we pan across a really quick way to make something like that, I'll provide this one on Canvas. But one of the ways that you can do that is to use a website like this to download an animated GIF, and we can convert that to a sprite sheet with padding as well. EasyGIF.com is the one that I used to create this sprite sheet from this animated GIF here. That will work for any animated GIFs that you have. We've got that part of the material, and that goes to the flipbook output. This is a reroute node. All it is doing is saying, think of it like a portal. It goes into here, and then right there, flipbook output, out. You see, and if I stop previewing it, you'll see it has the same color as well. Well, that's that first bit. If we start previewing this, is to get these lines coming up like this of like TV lines that you can see panning up and wobbling around. There are two versions of it. I'm going to go through the simple version of this now. Before we do that, what I'm going to have to do is explain what this funky coloured texture is. If I open this up, see that it is a texture with information in the red channel, a black part and a white part, information in the green channel, a checkerboard, information in blue channel, the stripe, and information in the alpha channel is gradient from the bottom there. And that is because, and that's what I've done is I've put them all into each channel. If I open up Photoshop, you can see here that we have, if I have a look at the layers, there's one layer in here, but if we go to the channel section, we can see that I have information in the red channel, green channel, and this is a different version of the texture. There is an alpha channel that I've made with the gradient in here as well. And they all combine together, we do get this crazy coloured texture, but that doesn't matter. The end result, the RGB information, is not what we're trying to get. We want the black and white information from each of these channels here to drive our texture. Let's go back into here, and we can see what I am doing in the... I'm taking that blue information here, and if I that out, take the RGB in here, disconnect this for a second, and I say I only take that blue information. Now it's going to appear red here because no matter, whenever there's a single channel in a material, it will be red. That you can understand that it's using one channel, and the first channel is the red channel. Even if I'm sending the blue channel through, we can see those stripes there, checkerboard here, and the block stripes here, the red channel. We can combine that together, and all we're doing is using a pattern node, and this is set to 0.1 to animate this texture along. Start previewing this on here. It is sliding the texture in a direction. If I did 1, it'll go much faster. 0.1, it's go much slower. The additional thing that we're doing is adding distortion to the UVs. This is going into the UVs, and we know that a UV is a coordinate system from 0 to 1 across two channels, U and V, represented here by red and green. And red and green together additive, and light is yellow, and the absence is black. 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0. Yeah. We are adding to this UV small amount of noise, and we multiplied it by a really tiny number. And if I make this 100%, we can see how much that distorts the UVs and destroys the pattern. And like, this might be a result that you want down the line. Like if we got rid of the panner there, panner here, you might think that's a cool like topographical map pattern or like that. It could be probably a Call of Duty skin that you'd pay £20 for. I'm going to do it by a very small amount. We can see when I do 5, it gets less, 0.2, even less, 1, and I set on 0.025 for this to get that small amount of distortion going around. And I'm moving it across so the noise is different all the time as well. So it's going up and it's distorting it across. And that is the very simple one. Panner node going into a texture, and this is the low res blurred noise which is built into Engine. If you can't see that, you should be able to click the settings button here, click show engine content if you can't see all of the built-in textures. That's that one. Let's stop previewing it. My preferred method would be to not rely on a texture, because we can't edit this now without going into Photoshop. This would be a little bit more of a complex of exactly the same thing. If I start previewing a node, we have these lines here and we can see them. But what I can do with this is, because it's all mathematically driven, no matter how big it is, it will be perfect. But I could say instead I only want 2 lines or 5 lines. 10, 20, yeah, there we go. 30, and on and so forth. We can really dial in the aesthetic for this. If we said actually we prefer that a little bit, we're doing that exact same distortion here, but we're adding in the bump offset on this one. I kept that out of the more simple one if you wanted to copy that, but it goes in between the panner here with these 2 nodes in between there if you wanted to copy that. And what that bump offset is going to do is actually I've added it on top. It actually brings it forward. It looks like it's on a different plane to the ring spinning around as well. Yeah, let's go to this one. We add the distortion to the tiling amount, and then what we have to do is, because there is no texture, we're moving UV coordinates, we mask out the green. Now, if I explain to you what that actually does, if I take a coordinate here, got that red gradient going down here and that green gradient going across here, but we know that they're actually black and white values. If I mask this out, component mask, and I say give me a red gradient, I get a gradient that starts from 0 and goes up to 1. If I say a green gradient, we get a gradient that goes from 0 to 1. There, that's what we've done here. We've masked it from 0 to 1, and then we've put it into a sine node, which turns it into a bar. The sine turns this wave from 0 to 1, from 0 to 1, back to 0 to -1, back to 0. Don't worry too much about the maths of that. That's the way that we create a gradient bar here. Now, and why there are many bars is because I've multiplied the coordinates by 75. This goes from 0 to 1. But if I said this was 0 to 10, we get us here. And you can see it goes from 0. It looks yellow because we can't visualize 100% of the colour. There aren't, if you add red and green together, yellow is 100%. That is 1, and then that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way to 10 across here if you were to read that as a graph. We use a saturate node here to clamp those values between 0 and 1. It looks more distorted here, but it actually shows up fine in world space. And that's how we have done these running lines. And that's, I think, would be a better way to do it, because again, you can come into here and tweak the amount of bars really quickly, whereas this one relies on that texture. Once you go out, we lerp in between. Rather than black and white, I'm using that white to say, be a very dark grey, and that black, stay black. That's it. For the next bit, the scan line, this blue bar does is all it does, but we're telling it to be, instead of be white, use this lerp to be that colour instead. If I start previewing this one, you can see there. The texture is very simple. The alpha channel, which is the channel which has that gradient in here, if I turn all of those off, it has that gradient in, and we're literally saying sliding it top to bottom over and over like that. Uses, again, a little bit of math, and we start with that texture coordinate. So we're taking the green channel, and because that's what we're masking out here, although fairly certain this should be the red channel. No, apparently not. It is the green channel. We are sliding that down. Yes, we're taking that down, but this gradient, if I start previewing it, that does that. Yeah, it's not going to show us that, is it? There we go. Right. We've got this gradient here, and we need to do the maths to convert that gradient into this gradient. The panner ruins the preview a little bit on this particular node, but that is happening there. But if I do it without it now, first thing I need to do is that this is facing the wrong way. So I'm going to use a 1 minus to make it it's bright at the top, and it is lighter at the bottom. Then I can use a frac node here. This, what it does is gets rid of any integers and gives me the floating decimal points. I think it might work without this actually. Yes, it does. I don't actually need the frac in this. I can delete that. We've got this. We flipped it around using the 1 minus. I'm then using multiply. Add lot to this bar here. What I'm doing is, where it is white, I'm making it even whiter. Up here is now 5, and 1 is down here by multiplying it by 5. If we were to, again, to see this as a graph, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then what I'm doing is using a power, but I'm doing it by a 0.5 to reduce and that gradient. It now blends from 0 to 2.5, I think is how the math works on that one. And then what I have to do is flip it around again, because I want that all to be black and this to be white. I'm inverting those values again. If I didn't do this 1 minus here, I would have to, I think what I would be able to do is multiply this by -5. Nuts. And I'm not going to make you watch me figure out the maths for this. This worked for me the first time. It'll work for you. And then I use a saturate node to bring these values, because that is below 0 now, to 0. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and it goes up to 1. And then that goes into here and drives that alpha like that. But I'm just using this switch node here too, that I can flip between the two of them. That's a bit of a crash course into more advanced materials for being able to achieve this sort of effect like here, that we see on here. I appear to have an... Yeah. Should do it now. And into there. I'm not going to worry about, but I do. There we go. I use the simple one for the moment. But yeah, all of these should work fine for you anyway. You may use this texture. Again, I'll upload that for you as well, but you can download it. I'll try and put a link into the YouTube video actually for you. Right. That's all of that. Now, the next step is to how do we get this material screen. I'm not going to worry about the unwrap process of the monitor on the outside. In fact, actually, I've done that you don't have to worry about the unwrap process at all for quite a few things if you're going to use gradients. But what I'm going to do is go into 3ds Max and open up the file. And what we're going to look at here is the monitor. Let's hide all of these for a moment and bring this into... What I've done with this is I selected the screen, and we could do that by angle. So it selects the screen, and I detached it and I unwrapped the screen. You can see it. That's what the unwrap looks like. If we put on the texture checker, we can see we don't get any of that space, but I know that the ring is in the middle there, and that is unwrapped that. Then I reattach it to the object, but it keeps a different color. The way that we do that is to use a multi-sub object. What I've done is with a new material, I can chuck this on here, and I can go on to where it says physical material, type in multi, you can click that, and you can object, set how many materials you want your object to have. This one needs 2, and then I'm going to copy that material into here. Make a copy. I give this one color, that another color. Now, how does it know what colors to make things? We can set material IDs for certain pieces. I can select that part and say 2, and now it is ID 2. When I export this out now, it's going to have 2 material slots in Unreal. And when we look at this one, we've got element 1, element element 0 and element 1. I can put any old material onto this. Now, and that's how you can make sure that the screen part has the screen texture, else you might find that your object looks like this. Now, what you might realize here as well is that this is working with a gradient. And it's not particularly because I've unwrapped it. If I put this one on here, I've actually made a material that no matter what asset you use, if I were to this chap, this object on it, he has a gradient from top to bottom, no matter what mesh it is. Let's say I get one of the skeletal meshes from here. This on here, and give it a second. And what it does is it figures out where the bottom of the mesh is and puts the gradient there and goes to the top here. I can put that one on it and let's go make that blue up. And now he's blue at the top, but are the totem poles as well. And it doesn't matter where it is in the world or how it is rotated, it will have that gradient on it. How we have done that is actually fairly simple. Again, I've put in parameters for the metallic specular roughness, but lerp node with color 1 and color 2 parameters in there, and an alpha. A saturate goes into here to set whatever values we've got from 0 to 1. Now, let me clean that up for you. I'll go through it for you exactly what is happening. Just we're using world position. I think you actually have to type world position. Yeah. And we're using the XYZ, and we are transforming that position to local space. We are dividing that local space object bounds. If we start previewing that, we get a lovely gradient for each direction that the object is facing. And what we do is we mask out the blue, if I start previewing, the blue for up and down, XYZ, red, green, blue. And we now apply that gradient by value to change how strong or wealth is position, essentially. If we start previewing this and we say put it in different numbers, start changing just the way that gradient appears on the object, and same with the power, the sharpness and the position using a multiply power node. We saturate those to clamp them between 0 and 1 and use them to an alpha behind here. If we didn't use the saturate node, we might get values outside of these colors, but yeah, it looks like over here it's going a bit too far. I think that oh no, it's lighting. I think the maths is fine, but a saturate node clamps the value between 0 and 1 and is almost free on most modern graphics hardware. To be honest, when in doubt, use the saturate node. All right, that is a local gradient for that, and we can chuck that on. We can have like a darker grey to a lighter grey. So you're going to notice how my colours are crushed on here. That isn't because I have really low graphics quality or YouTube compression. That's actually a post-process, an intentional thing. You'll notice that it's a little bit pixelated as well. I'll talk about that as well. But first, I want to cover these two materials because they're very, very simple. These are world aligned materials. If I have a look at my world aligned mask, I've got color 1 and color 2, and they are going into a lerp, which drives base color. And all I'm using is a mask parameter here, which I can swap between either the red channel, for stripiness, the green channel for checkerboards, which is the only two that I really want to use. This one would give me that TV screen, and this one I think won't work ever anyway. But we generally switch in between red and green. And you can see those work like that. What we're using here is size to determine size, and that is if I change this number, nothing should happen. If I try 200, yeah, that one does the Z scale. Yes, yeah, that makes sense because I'm using XYZ texture. This one changes the scale on this side. This one changes the scale to this side, and this one changes the scale on the other side, or other direction, other axis. Some all even to keep them gridded like that. The other way that we could potentially is, I wonder if I can just and that would work. I could convert that to a parameter, and that probably makes more sense anyway, because we do want that to be uniform scaling. But the other way would give you options if you wanted it to be different. But it's as simple as that, and you're using that RGBA channels texture, and again, that'll be linked in the description. Let's go into here. How does that work? Essentially, I have created two material instances from that and set colors. Let's say I wanted another one. Get a material instance. Let's drag a block out. Just this onto here. On this one, I'm going to mask out. Just create the grid across all sides. I'm going to set one color to be blue, color to be, and now, no matter where I put this, that grid is well aligned. If I rotate it, if I scale it, doesn't change anything. The grid is. And that's how I've done the grass and the checkerboard for this, and it means that I can really quickly take extra bits, and even if they're overlapping, we won't actually see it because they're using the same material. It gets rid of Z fighting, and again, I can copy pieces off like that. To create the sky, I didn't want the Unreal sky. I've literally got an inverted sphere using the Sky Sphere mesh, which is in Engine Sky. Again, you should be able to find, you should have one of these in your world by default. And those are the most complex things that I've done, other than like deleting all the complex stuff in the lighting. I've went into project settings and disabled lumen. The main being that I think lumen, yes, lumen is lighting. In project settings, it may have been in editor preferences potentially. One of the two. I've disabled lumen. Yeah, it's not that one. It is project settings, and then to show you which setting, but I've disabled to get the lighting. Have it in this scene. In here. To later. I won't scroll through. Google disable lumen. I'm sure you'd have to type lumen if there's a checkbox or a drop down thing in here. I don't know why I can't see it now. Or maybe it's because I disabled it. Right. The bit I want to talk about is the post anyway. In here, what we have to get the colours looking how I want them, I've messed around with the brightness. I've set those both to 0. I've made sure this is unbound, that is ticked. And I have played around with the film and to tweak these to my liking. Mainly it's slope and this I'm doing. Yeah, shoulder is you can see enable and disable. Just different settings do. I've turned off bloom, enabling it and setting it to 0. On is on, turn it off, and well, the last thing is a material. To add a material, you click this plus here, you click choose asset reference, and you add the material in. That's what I've got here. And the material that we've got is this pixelize post-process material instance. And I'll show you what the actual material is. Now, there's 2 parts of it. There's one which is pixelating and one which is posterizing. I'll show you the posterize one first, or out the pixelization. You can see here, what I'm doing is reducing the amount of colors that are available. Unreal. That's it really. I get to get a scene texture node and set it to post-processing 0. I put a power of 0.5 into that. And I divide that by 1. And then I multiply that by the number of colours that I want it to be. I floor them. That rounds them down. I then divide that by the amount of colours that I want. And I divide this by this. That into power. And that gets us this sort of result. I don't want to go too much into the maths of it, but what we're doing is we're truncating and saying any colours that are next to each other, average them out and make them the same colour. And it gets us this sort of colour banding effect that you might see on an older, like a PlayStation or a Sega Saturn. The other one is a pixelization effect here. This one, screen position. You multiply that by the screen and the size of the pixels that we want it to be. 1, that'll be fine. But if we do 8, we get this really pixelated picture. I use a seal node to round up, and I multiply that by 1 divided by we need to divide it first. We put that into the UVs of the post-process in 0, and then we multiply them both together to get the result we want. In fact, actually, I think I could get away with putting this into back of here, and then the scene won't go darker because we're not multiplying the scene by the scene. And if I set it now, my scene will be much brighter, actually. Yeah, there we go. I've improved my material event as well. Now I would go back into my saturation, just like that. So to go into film, and I can tweak one of these well. Gamma here as well. Here we go. Yes. Let's go back into film now. Do this until see with the look that you've got. Back into saturation. In fact, I'm going back into gamma and actually want a little bit of that. Yeah, I think I might like the look of that. Once you're happy, you can position your cameras. I want a 29:9 aspect ratio. Again, I've set my film back to be 21:9 mm. We get a ultra wide shot, and it gets all of the things in the frame that I want, such as Chaos Emerald and so on. The pixelization might be a bit too much now. Into here. And then try 16 colors instead. And yeah, we can play around with that. To be honest, I'm not a massive fan of it at all, but I wanted to show you things that you can do, and I think that looks a little bit better actually, without the pixelization and slightly reduced colors. So you can see is there, it's not what it was, but yeah, that's it really. And then I was going to show you how to model this. At this point, you guys should be able to figure out how to do these shapes if you've done the tutorials for Spring. And then again, the monitor is a chamfer box with the end squished down and a cylinder on the bottom of it. The spikes with me, you did the chow, done the helix and the spring pad, and the torus for the rings, which again, these might be a little bit thin. If you wanted to tweak any of these, you could say, go to that ring, you didn't like it, say, you messed up, but you didn't want to re-unwrap it, you could try it on modifier, make it much. That shouldn't ruin the unwrap. And let's go back to. You can see the process of doing things iteratively as well. I'm going to put that. Going to export selected. Then put that on my desktop for now. Okay. Now, what I would do is I can browse to this asset, and rather than clicking in re-import under asset actions, it should be here. Oh no, that's the actual blueprint. We don't want the blueprint. I want the ring here. Rather than re-import with a new file, and let's go back to that ring chunky, set to FBX. And this one wasn't unwrapped, but you can see now it's got a different size on it. But that's I was going to show you how to actually just spin as well. But now with my cool gradient material, I can maybe duplicate one of these, that onto the ring, or ring, there we go. And because it doesn't need an unwrap, yellow here, yeah, just give it metallic And that's in there now. And what I did with the ring to make it spin around was really quickly is I right clicked it. I said asset action, create blueprint with this, save, and I went to component, add rotating movement. I saved, and then I go into my blueprints and I can drag these out. Just I simulate, spin around. There we go. And I think those rings actually now match up with that one a bit better. And if I want to update the colours for all of these, I can go to that static mesh and I can here, go back to here on this, and that should now set all of those to be that colour. And two, if I want to resize all of them, there's this one small. Just here, click this padlock to size, compile, save, and there we go. It's really quick to iterate on your environments. Hopefully this is enough for you to finish the assignment and get your renders looking really nice. Think about the direction of the light, direction of the camera, but don't worry if the scene looks messy. Other angles, think about the composition you're doing with the camera. The only picture that matters is the one that we are taking a picture with, or the position that we're taking a picture from. It's pretty much everything. If you've got to this point, good luck with the rest of the assignment, and if you need any help, grab me in class.